as you heard earlier, the small people is an exciting day, I think, in many people's houses that have young ones living with them. Certainly that was the case in our house. It was just a whirlwind of activity right after we woke up this morning, and wrapping paper all over the floor, and ribbons everywhere, and just detritus covering the whole house somehow. And it was really delightful. And I understand now, having become a parent, that this is the culmination of a lot of planning and activity over a long period of time. I didn't appreciate that quite before. Both sort of short-term planning in terms of identifying and procuring things that the people in your family will find interesting, but also sort of much longer-term planning, right? Like having thought years and years and years ago, someday it may be the case that it's not just the two of us quietly sipping our coffee and opening meaningful gifts, but there will be more people with us, more chaos. Does that make any sense? Sort of planning for this Christmas for 2 months, but also for about 9 years, right? And thinking that this may be one day the way that life is. And for me, that is really descriptive of the difference between the Gospel of John, how he wants to tell the story, and Matthew and Luke, right? Matthew and Luke want to tell you about right there, right? We read this last night. The angels and the shepherds and the magi, very immediate. What is happening when God is born? But John wants to take this sort of mega, macro, 10,000-foot view. Right? This entire thing we just heard Ray read is a nativity story. It's about how was God born into the world? But it doesn't start with, and Mary received a message from an angel that she would have a child. It started in the beginning, right? It started way back, this idea that God had about how God would come into the world. And it's a Genesis story, but it was interesting. As Greg was reading, I thought, I wish somebody would write a pageant about that, right? Matthew and Luke tend to get all the pageantry. Every Christmas pageant I've ever seen is some amalgamation of Matthew and Luke. So take that as a challenge, someone in here. Write a John nativity pageant in the beginning. I don't know how to God the Creator. But I like this story of the nativity too, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to read it today because it's a way of saying this was always the plan. This was always the plan. From the beginning, it was always God's plan to be with us and to love us and to dwell among us. Nothing fundamentally changed in the nature of God to make that necessary, to bring about. It was always the plan that God had to be with us in this way, is what I think John's saying to us. And to me, that sort of harkens to, have you ever had that really deep and profound feeling when you receive a gift from somebody, maybe something unexpected, and it's very meaningful? And you feel as though somebody has thought about this. Someone has thought about me in this way. Someone has thought about all that I desire and all that I need in my life and has provided something for me that touches that deep place. And it occurs to me that is what God was doing. Thinking about what will people need. From the beginning, this wasn't a whim. This was something that God had thought about and seen and understood about us, that one day we would need God to be with us in this certain way. And it also makes me think of the times that God has been present with me at various points in my journey. I wonder if you have those times, if you have touch points in your life where you feel as though God has been dwelling with or within you, or God has drawn close to you, maybe in the form of a gift from a friend, maybe just in a sense of presence with you. Or if you haven't had that experience, have you longed for it? And is naming that some way that this Christmas you might open your heart to that? And that's just what I want to share with you today, right? That this idea is that Christmas is the unfolding, the unwrapping of a gift that God has been planning for us, and in that way meant to bring us joy, meant to bring us affirmation, and meant to bring us assurance that that was God's intention to really dwell with us. So as you go forward from this, I would just encourage you to be thinking about that, and thinking about how is this gift of God's presence unfolding in my life, possibly to be a source of joy and peace. I'm going to invite us to join in a little affirmation of that. We've been doing that throughout Advent. I think we'll continue one more week, but I want you to do that this week with me. Just say that out loud, what we've just been talking about. This is printed in your bulletin. I'm the regular type. You are the bold. And so let's just sort of speak this aloud together and think about how this resonates with us today. Saying, like Mary,
we believe.